names in order that people signed up. Probably most of you signed up wish to speak. Let me just give you that opportunity. Catherine Wagner. Would you like to speak now? Yes, if you wish. Yeah, we're gonna. If this many people really are planning to speak, we're going to be in a time crunch, so we'll let you know.
I'll keep it as short as I can. Yes, I wanted to speak to the issue of the ban on hyperfracking. And what I really wanted to focus on was the economic ends of things, because it's often said that fracking is going to bring in all kinds of money and we're going to just be rolling in money and it's going to make everybody wealthy and create huge numbers of jobs. I've really been looking at the economic issues recently and have come to a very different conclusion after reading many papers on it and looking at what's happened in other states. And I've come to the conclusion that it's highly likely that if fracking goes on here in Dryden or even in some of the neighboring areas so that trucks and other things are coming into here, it would not surprise me at all if our local taxes have to be raised in order to meet the demands on the infrastructure, including roads and other services. And I just want to make a few points about some of the reasons why I'm saying this. First of all, New York State has no severance tax. And therefore, as the gas leaves New York State, we're giving it away to the gas companies for free. Furthermore, they have the ability to book their sales out of state, so that any tax money from the sales of the gas may very likely go to other states. Their headquarters are in other states. Their equipment is manufactured in other states. So when you're talking about the money coming in, it's mostly going to go to Texas and various other places. In addition, in Pennsylvania, 70% of the workers are from other states, not from Pennsylvania. So you have 70% of the workers being migrant workers, many of them living in man camps. And they're working like long hours, 2 weeks on, then they go home for 2 weeks. And so they're not spending their money locally, at least only to a very minimal amount, and they're not going to be paying local taxes or even state taxes. So all this money that might come in is really quite minimal. On the outflow part, the experience in Arkansas, where it's been going on for 5 or 6 years, they do have a severance tax, but the reports I've heard are that the amount of money they have to spend on road repairs alone has been several times the amount of money that's come in through the severance tax. In addition, what we've seen when we look at Arkansas and Pennsylvania and other states is that there's, of course, the road repair, which I think a lot of people know will cause a lot of damage. There's environmental cleanups that it's hard to predict what that will be. There certainly will be a great deal, even if there are no accidents, and if there are accidents, it'll be worse. It puts heavy loads on police, on emergency service, health services, social services, so it's likely those will have to be expanded. Home values are probably going to go down, and right now, as many of you probably know, there are problems with getting mortgages and keeping title insurance on homes in the areas where land has been leased. In addition, you can have some financial losses from the blocking of the roads by the trucks. Down in Pennsylvania, one of the fire chiefs is very concerned that the trucks on the roads are so bad that they can't get to fires and other emergencies on time. And in general, with the emergencies that the town will have to think about dealing with, the experts often have to be flown in from Texas. So the town's going to have to really figure out, if it goes on here, they're going to have to figure out how to meet emergencies with the local resources. And it's just going to put a tremendous strain and drain on these local resources. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Steve Cook.
Steve Cook from Gulf Hill Road area. I urge you, as a responsible person representing all the people of the town of Dryden, only go with a moratorium at this time. The facts are not in yet. Let the DEC do its job. Going for a ban is a knee-jerk reaction. Not one landowner wants to have his water contaminated, but an all-out ban is an overreaction to media drama. As responsible representatives of all the town residents, a moratorium would only make sense at this time.
Thank you. Lisa.
I have to use this microphone. You can hear me, I'm all right.
I can hear you.
Well, I'm a landowner, I'm a farmer, and I don't like people telling me what I can do with my land. I'm really set against what they're trying to ban, the drilling in the town of Dryden. I think there's ways that we can work it out and make everything work. And that's about all I know. Farmers in Pennsylvania are buying a lot of new machinery down there, so I think it's helping the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruno Schickle.
Thank you very much. I want to speak just to two matters. One is, I know you're considering the overall zoning rewrite for consideration. I'm putting it on the calendar, I believe in July, for a public hearing to move that to pass. This is unrelated to the gas issue. I would respectfully ask you to not put that to a public hearing, but first publish it and hold an information meeting on it. You have made so many changes on that proposed zoning change that the document simply does not look anything like the original document. And so, and it's big enough where people have to have a chance to put their hands around it and to really understand it. And I think if you go immediately to a public hearing, I think you'd be doing the people of Dryden a disservice in terms of giving them the opportunity to really understand it. So I'd ask you to consider that. Regarding the ban or the prohibition through zoning that you're proposing to move forward to a public hearing tonight, I would respectfully ask you to reconsider this approach. And I would say this for two reasons. One is, right now, there's two extremes. There's the extreme of prohibition or complete banning, and then there's sort of the Pennsylvania model, which says do anything you want. And there's enormous ground in between these two opposites. And that's the common ground that this board should be finding. This board should be seeking the common ground which balances the interests of all of the residents into a common cause. And I believe that there's enough common ground there that can be found. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. One is support robust regulation, aggressive enforcement, support a gasoline tax. This one woman spoke to it earlier. I mean, that's to me is obvious. Texas, Alaska, major gas-producing, energy-producing states have an energy tax. It would enormously help to offset the property tax burden that the town residents are paying. And I think it would make a ton of sense. Support a reasonable highway bill. That's a legitimate concern. We don't want our highways destroyed. We don't want to have to be ponying up a ton of money to repair them. Support a very reasonable approach there. I also think there's many other things you can do, and I'll give you a couple examples. For instance, you could say through your zoning, you need 25 acres in order to put a well pad in. Or you got to be 2,000 feet from the nearest house. Or you got to be 3,000 feet from the nearest well. The point is there is enormous ground between these two extremes that can be found and can address specifically the issues that are before you. And you want to illustrate another point as a means of analogy. Lou Stuttle spoke earlier. Now, the town, in their wisdom, bought his development rights, not to the gas, bought the development rights for his, so that it would stay, his farm of 400 acres would remain agriculture, going on into the future. You recognize that these were rights that had value, and you paid him $688,000 of our tax money. Yet, so the question I have for you is, why did you bother? Why didn't you simply rezone his land and say, you can't use it for anything but farming? Save the taxpayers the $688,000. Case closed, all done. You didn't because it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be just. It's wrong. You recognize it as a right that has value, and to do otherwise than what you did would be confiscating the value of his land. And that's what you're doing here with this. You're moving in a direction which should scare the hell out of everybody in this room. Because if you can do this, Evan Carpenter has a farm that you guys would love to buy as development rights, but you don't have the money. The state doesn't have the money. So hey, let's just take them. And then tomorrow it's Paul Cook's farm. Let's just take his. And whose farm's going to be next? Whose house is going to be next? Whose livelihood is going to be next? That's the issue before us. And I really would ask you to back up for a minute and consider what you're doing. And to consider the long-term implications of what this is. And there's common ground. There's area of agreement. Everybody has these concerns about what's happening. Take a go slow approach. Take an approach that says we're going to try to slow this down, creep it out, and we're going to take an incremental approach, and we're going to aggressively try to regulate this and do everything we can to not have these negative impacts happen to us. But don't confiscate people's rights. It's just wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Dem.
First, I would like to ask a question of the board and then also of the audience. How many of you have visited Towanda, Pennsylvania, Bradford County? And in the audience?
I
Louder,
would
please.
address the board.
Take the microphone down to your check. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Last year, I was there off and on, probably every other week, taking care of a friend. And you can hear what the first speaker said in terms of, one, emergency vehicles not being able to get through the town, because all day long, there are 20-ton semis carrying either water that they've sucked up from the Susquehanna River or from even hydrants. I saw them taking from hydrants of the town. Or they're carrying waste the other direction, or they're carrying fracking fluid to the sites. It's really important to experience what it is like in Bradford County. There's no way that you can imagine the impact. You drive up so-called Paradise Road and you see the white large water containers because people's wells have been contaminated. If you follow the fracking trucks, you see 20-ton fracking trucks on 10-ton restricted roads. Barreling along. You can see pads, cement pads, perched above people's houses. And again, more of the white water containers because of the runoff. You can see the plastic lining holding the poisonous fracking fluid in a little pool next to the well pad. There's nothing like seeing it personally. It's really important. It's an hour south from Ithaca, not far. Seeing it personally will make you more adamant to keep it from happening here. The industrialization is something to behold. It would totally change the quality of our life here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Smansky.
Well, I'm glad I get a chance to speak right now after these speakers before me, because I think this is a perfect example of a couple of speakers that talked about the problems that this industry may bring to the town of Dryden. I have gone to Towanda. Just to let you know, I'm a planning board member in Freeville. I'm also a landowner here in the town of Dryden. I have an engineering background. I've worked 11 years in energy conservation. I've worked in agriculture, third-generation farmer, conservationist. So I love the state. My wife and I worked back here, moved back into New York so that we could live here. All right, so we have an investment in this area. On the other hand, it's interesting that I did not have the same experience that the last speaker had. I've been to Towanda. As a matter of fact, I was there when there wasn't any traffic at all. And you wouldn't know that there was even an industry operating there. So there is a disparate experience here. And as a board, and Marianne, I would go back to you when you were looking at the energy law. We spent at least a year, remember Steve, there were at least a year looking at this issue. And we had public hearings. I don't understand the resolution that you passed April 20th, and now you're going to go to a vote July. That doesn't make any sense to me, especially with the, on a legal basis, there's just so many questions here. And that's why I support what Bruno said. There is no reason to push this. Now, I was in, last night I was over in Brookendale, and people have questions, and people need to get answers on both sides of the coin. This is a very volatile issue, a very passionate issue. And for this board to take position and to, if you will, and I agree with the way the law is, if there was a ban, it would be confiscation of my rights, of my personal property rights. And I don't believe that's what you're trying to accomplish, or if you are trying to accomplish, you need to be clear about that you're trying to confiscate mineral rights from landowners. Because that will obviously change, I think, the context of what we're doing. So I implore you to slow this down. And I will also let you know, as a public official, I know that if you move too fast on this, you will legally put yourself in a bind because you won't show that you did your due diligence. So you really need to think about this. You really need to think about that we need time to research, to have more group interaction. I was talking with Hillary. Hillary and I are on opposite sides of the coin, but we talked about the fact that we could come up with agreed upon kind of solution if we sat down and looked it over and worked out.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I thought I heard you say, is that if that there was, there you go. So okay, so that's just an example that we need more conversation on this. It's because people are far apart on it. And you'll bring more division into this community than resolution.
Thank you. Charles Hatfield.
Good evening. I'm Charles Hatfield. I live on 240 Gulffield Road. Been a dairy farmer there all my life. And I've sat where you fellas sat for 16 years, so I know you've got a tough decision to make. But all I'm asking you to do is use common sense and think this thing through. Nobody wants to pollute our environment, our water, anything. And I think in time, they're going to improve this system so that it's going to be a better way of not polluting all those things. And I was in Pennsylvania, and I thought the roads, to me, looked like the gas companies improved them before they were even using them. That was my observation the day I was there. But all I'm asking you is use some common sense and think this through to demand that there's never going to be a gas well drill in Dryden. It's kind of scary. The country needs the gas just under these to make this economy work. As far as saying never can be, I'm concerned about that and the rights that you're taking home landowners. Thank you.
And as you know from sitting on this board, that it's nothing is forever.
Pardon?
Just a reminder that I know you know from sitting on this board that nothing we pass is forever. Chris Gibbons.
Chris Gibbons, and of course, most of you know that I'm on the Dryden School Board, but I'm actually not here representing the Dryden School Boards. I do want to make that clear, although I am an interested party, and I am here gathering information that I will relay back to the school board. But I do know that we've had discussions in the past years, since I've been on the board, about the possibility of having gas drilling on school property and what that would mean in terms of revenue for the school district. I mean, we are all up to here with our property taxes, and we cannot pay any more. So we need to find creative ways to generate revenue in this state to support the services that we want, like education, for example. So I do think that there is a lot of merit in going slow, analyzing this situation, and seeing if maybe there's an opportunity here, as some people have said before, to come to a position that we can be reasonably comfortable with. I mean, we're always going to be uncomfortable about something, but we find a position that we can live with. All right, and if we can find a position that we can live with in terms of this possible, I think it's a possible windfall in terms of economic benefits to our community. But we also need this in New York State. New York State is turning into a ghost state. People are leaving New York State. Businesses are leaving New York State. Wall Street may even be leaving New York State, okay? And I'm in the financial services business, so I know what I'm talking about. It's not a friendly state to do business in. So we need to start looking at ways to be a friendlier state to do business in, but we also need to be looking for ways to generate revenue, to replace some revenue that we're going to be losing from these businesses leaving. And so I think we need to consider there's a possibility here, because look at it this way. Even if I live in the village, so I don't have any property that will be drilled under, I'm sure. But if our neighbors, have their incomes, multiplied, they will come into the village and they'll come to our restaurants. They will shop. They will have to pay higher taxes on their income. They will do remodeling on their homes. I mean, there is a benefit, in the community when you have people that are successful. We always talk about we want to attract people to the community that build nice homes so that they increase our tax base. Well, you need to have a reason for people to do that, okay? And so this is a possible situation where people that are already in the community that have been struggling, many of them for years, trying to hold on to their land, they may actually be able to, benefit from that, and that will benefit our whole community. So I just want you to maybe slow down, think about the possibility, think about the opportunity that we have here as well to do it right, but also to benefit us significantly in an economic way. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, I don't know. I haven't spent a lot of time making a speech up for you, but I thank you for having everybody for coming to this meeting tonight. And for me, I'm the one that's got this started. You've seen my name in the paper lots of times, and I'm the bad guy. And I want to poison all the water. Surely do. I got no other choice in this world but to poison the water. And I think that we shouldn't drill any gas in Dryden. I don't think it ought to have any. And you ought to shut off what we got already going and let them figure out a way to heat their houses without it. Enjoy themselves. And including the school. The school generates electricity from gas, do they not? And Cornell is heating the whole place with gas. And why shouldn't some of them dollars stay in Dryden? And I better shut up.
Thank you. Pleasure being.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak. I've been following, as you know, of what you've been doing in recent months and recent week or two as well. I've been following this issue for a couple of years now. And as you know, I own nearly 100 acres and have not leased and turned down the landman many times. I certainly disagree with a bunch of the people who have spoken recently. And I'm sure we've discussed all of this many times before, so I'm not going to go into those arguments. Instead, I want to say congratulations to you for doing good work that you've done recently in preparing the town's ban on gas drilling. And obviously, you put a tremendous amount of hard work into it, and it shows. That's an extremely important step for protecting us, the town's residents. And I want to say that those who are large landowners in the town, like myself, are by far the small minority, and those who have leased are by far the small minority. And even of those who have leased, many of them, and I know many of them personally, are very sorry that they've leased. What I want to suggest tonight is that there's an extremely important step that we can take, just one modification to what you've already proposed as of tonight, that will add further benefits to your existing proposal. I want to propose a small addition which should make a very large improvement. We should add one additional prohibited use to the 3 that you've already proposed in section 2104. That's a prohibition against high-impact industrial uses. There would be 3 major benefits to this addition. 2 have to do with the town's position in regard to defending the legality of the new prohibitions. The other has to do with the comprehensiveness of the protection that will be afforded by these new section 2104 prohibitions. The first benefit is to avoid a due process violation. Your numbers 1, 2, and 3 prohibitions in your proposed new section 2104 are, by their nature, prohibitions with respect to a particular industry, the gas industry. By focusing on a particular industry, these run the risk of being ruled invalid as due process violations. To avoid a court ruling of a due process violation, any outright prohibition must be narrowly tailored to the harm perceived. Although the town's new proposal makes every attempt to do just that, it remains open to court interpretation if ever so challenged by the well-funded lawyers for the gas industry. In contrast, by its very definition, the prohibition of high-impact industrial use, or of high-impact industrial uses in general, as that category, focuses only on the harms or the impacts. Indeed, those harms are the very test of whether a use is considered a high-impact industrial use. By focusing on those harms instead of focusing on a particular industry, this prohibition avoids the whole issue of due process violation. Thus, even if your numbers 1, 2, and 3 prohibitions in your existing proposal were ruled invalid as due process violations, the high-impact industrial use prohibition would likely stand.
Out of respect for the number of meetings you've attended, Buzz, I'd like you to ask you your second point in a minute.
Okay, well, I have a similar argument about authority violation, that you're potentially going to be ruled banning a business, which the town doesn't have the right to do. And then the third potential benefit, which is probably the most significant of all, is that in your efforts so far in what you've been proposing for your prohibitions, you've been making every attempt to make sure you cover the various accessory uses that go along with gas drilling. Pipelines, pipe yards, compressor stations, and many others, dealing with waste and the like. So if you instead, or in addition, I'm not saying instead, what you've done is good, leave it in there by all means, but in addition to what you've done, if you add in the ban of high-impact industrial uses per se as a general category, you're going to cover, as a catch-all, all of these other different kinds of accessory uses, because they're all part of high-impact industrial uses. So that one addition would act as a catch-all to be sure that we're providing a much more comprehensive protection. So in summary, I just want to say that by adding a one-sentence prohibition to what you've already written, we've gained 3 categories of really critical benefits to protect our citizens. So why wouldn't we do that simple addition? Thank you.
Thank you.